Alhamdulillah. Ah, welcome to Ethics as Sharia of Power. Inshallah, by the end of our time together, you'll have some sense of what I mean by that phrase and fill with joy every time you hear it. I am overjoyed to be able to speak with you about some of what I have been learning and a number of other members of the Tariqa have been learning about right use of power from the Right Use of Power Institute. It has changed my relationship to the word power, which it used to be just scary, right? Power, scary. I don't know. And right use of power defines power as essentially neutral, that it's the ability to have an effect or influence, to take action, in which case, even a baby has power because when they start screaming, the whole household is affected. If you were to stand up right now and start screaming, the whole room would be affected. If you sit in deepest prayer, making salawat with your soul, the room will be affected. We all have power. So that was the first relief, is understanding that it's not something, just something that people with large black boots have. It's something that everybody has. And then the question is, how do we use it well? Keeping in mind that underuse of our power is also a misuse of power. Not noticing we have it and not using it when we could is a misuse of power. So, coming to this understanding, the training that I went through, and that I'm actually now, they have invited me to be the lead on the curriculum revision for right use of power in spiritual leadership. So, pretty much every day of the week, I'm up to my eyeballs in discussions about this, which means that I'd like to be up even higher than my eyeballs in discussions with you guys, because I want to make this a curriculum that really gives us what we need. Um, my sense of myself in an up power role has gotten so much easier because I have so much more ability to step in with calm confidence, given that I have more of an idea of what the issues are, what to be aware of, what to pay attention to, and how to elicit feedback. I'm not perfect, but I also have more ability to go ahead and not be perfect because it's a lot easier for me to admit it and remediate. So I highly recommend getting to know right use of power so as to be able to step into our up power roles. You're going to learn the lingo soon, more confidently, more easily, and with more grace. It's really, really changed the way that I am in down power roles. For me, being in a down power role meant basically waiting to feel violated in some way and then fight to the death. I'm now so much more aware of my responsibilities in the down power role so that I can engage self responsibly enough to let the humanity of the teacher of the or the healer be the humanity of the teacher of the healer, and be there for the light of Allah as it comes through them, and not worry about the rest so much. If they're looking for feedback, I can mention it to them, but I'm there for the beauty, the healing, the elevation. And it's just so much easier for me to have that now without so much injury, really. So it's part of what, that's why I'm very excited about it for all of us, whether we're in up power roles some of the time, down power roles some of the time, peers, and feeling what that feels like. There's a lot to be aware of I was never aware of before. And it can make us all go, ah, Okay. Yeah. Um, it's ethics at its least boring. It's actually really fun to talk this stuff out. Well, I was at the dinner table last night, really like getting into it. Like, yeah, there's a conference that Right Use of Power Institute is putting on October 18th and 19th. If you type in the coupon code Sufi Power, you're in for free. So just letting you know that. Yeah. One of the things that was an immediate relief for me in learning about right use of power is Right Use of Power Institute's understanding of the difference between abuse of power and misuse of power. This was a game changer. Abuse of power is defined, is considered the kinds of abuses that are egregious, usually at least somewhat conscious, and more rare. Misuse of power, on the other hand, is unconscious, totally unintentional, and as common as light bulbs. It's all over. It happens all the time. Like we're in that all the time. The relief of understanding that it's not all abuse, misuse. It happens. It happens especially when we are in a community of people with often very high levels of spiritual light and no training in community leadership. They're not equivalent. Having tremendous amounts of light pouring through you doesn't mean you understand automatically how to work with power dynamics here in community life. The amount of simultaneous forgiveness and empowerment that flowed through me as I realized that. Oh, this might be a misuse of power. It may be that just a little bit of, hey, you might not be aware of how that landed. I'll be very interested in hearing what your intention was, but first let me tell you how that landed and how maybe it could have gone a little bit differently. Phew. So that's my relief, my joy, my excitement about it. How many people here were not in Nura Mahaba and Wadud's class yesterday? Quite a few. Okay. Then I will mention that in Right Use of Power Institute model, there are a number of different kinds of power that they behave somewhat differently, and that it's hard to understand power if we think it's all one giant glom. First, there's universal power. That's what they call it at Right Use of Power Institute. We call it a law. They call it universal power. That's fine by any name. Then there's personal power, which, as we mentioned, even a baby has that. We all have personal power. We may be more up capacity, as they call it, in our personal power, or maybe we may be having a day when we're a little down capacity in our personal power, but we have it. So sometimes there can be a feeling of imbalance that is hard to work with if we're having a down capacity day and everybody seems so much bigger than we are. Um, and so this is a mediation for us with our beloved Rob to ask for help with the development and maturation and baka of the qualities in ourselves so that we can, with our personal power, obey the order. B. This is the essence of right use of personal power. Kun. And we can be each other's encouragement to do so. Then there's role power. There's a lot to say about role power. This is just a taste. Role power is considered to be an add on to our personal power, Like, for instance, I have my personal power. I have all 99 in there somewhere. Can't always find them, but they're in there. And role power is added on. For instance, teacher or healer or airplane pilot, doctor, captain of the ship. And with this added role power, we have certain responsibilities. We have more power, but we also have responsibilities. And I will speak more about specifically what those responsibilities when I can get a little further into them. But basically, caring for the container, caring for safety of in the container. Like, if you're the healer, you're in charge of the treatment room being a safe place. If you're a teacher, you're holding the space, monitoring impact. This is my intention. I'm bringing through holy light. What's actually happening? They're just wondering, why are you holding a rubber chicken? And they're not listening to a word that you say. It's my security chicken. Um, Eliciting and inviting and considering feedback pathways is one of the responsibilities that's in an up power role. So that means just like, hey, you got a problem with it? Let me know. No, maybe not quite like that. Like what? What in any particular group is likely to elicit honest feedback and delivering on whatever service it is that put us in the up power role. If you're a pilot, fly. If you're a healer, heal. If you're a teacher, teach. Do that thing. Right Use of Power Institute says those are the responsibilities of the up power role, but they are also the responsibilities of the down power role too. To be concerned with safety, to look at impact, not just intention, to have pathways of feedback that we open, and to focus on the intended service. Right Use of Power says that the down power role has 100% responsibility for all of these aspects of the relationship, and the up power person, teacher, healer, etc., has 150%. Can't really get completely behind that math, but I understand the idea of why they use that phrase. It's like there's something extra. With more power comes more responsibility, more awareness, more actually paying attention to what's happening. Yeah. Then there's status power. Status power is culturally conferred according to the values of the culture. In a culture that values men over women, then being male will have status power. In a culture that values white skin over darker skin, white skin will have status power. It's not fair, but it happens. We need to notice what's happening so that we can remediate that in a few different ways. Very long discussion. One, in a one-on-one sense or in groups to take responsibility for noticing and remediating. And two, through using collective power to shift the last form of power, namely systemic power. The way that the culture recreates itself by giving the most important roles to the people of the highest status, who then create the laws and the rules and the customs that keep the same people in a high status and then get all the roles, etc., etc., etc. It's fascinating to look at this not just in countries and in the world, but in organizations as well, because it happens. Cultures form according to certain value systems and then fall into self-perpetuation patterns When we notice it, we can talk about it. We can say, hey, is this really in service of the highest? And make the shifts we want to shift in a much more quiet and merciful way. Slow revolutions or just nudges or truing up, truing up. I'll mention that between role and status in spiritual community, as well as a few other places, the distinction can get a little puzzling because a person can be in the role of teacher and they may not be teaching right then, but they may act like they are. Right there, I have, I did, yeah, what shall I say? I had a little gathering of people that I very specifically said, nobody here is a teacher. No teachings. You want to share? Share. No teaching allowed. Many of us couldn't do it. Just couldn't stop continuously being in the teacher role and giving each other teachings to people who did not consent to be in the student role. So there is a kind of status that is associated with being a teacher, a healer, that we might choose to sail with that even in the grocery store. And so that's something that it's so wonderful to me, so wonderful to have words for this so that we can start truing up in that also. Yeah. You're just saying, hey, I'm not feeling like a student right now. Thanks. That's it. That's good. Okay. Yeah. I was going to say something else about that. What was it? Yeah, that status power is very cultural context dependent. Round here, spiritual rank gets you some respect. In my family, in a lot of other people's family, it'll get a laugh, maybe, at best, sneers, derision at worst. So, what we have, what our status has a lot to do with what everybody else holds as valuable. And then, unfortunately, carries over into areas where it doesn't necessarily belong. I think very much about Sidi, who was like done with that. He's like, the things got a little too like, oh, you're so great. I am only a poor, humble slave. When he was teaching, it was all thunder and lightning and wonder and prophets and stuff. And then, he'd be having lunch and it was Papa, a much smaller, simpler presence. He knew how to put down role and he knew how to dispense with status. I appreciate that. I think we can learn from that. I'm so happy to now have words for it. Yeah. Hmm. I mentioned collective power briefly, how amazing it is to make Vicar together. There's so much that happens when two or more are gathered, and even more when 200 or more are gathered. Really lovely. Yeah. Okay. That's settling so far. Maybe I'll just take a moment and breathe for you to go, oh my God. My students compare me to a dump truck of compost that just keeps on loading. Yeah. Mm. And I look forward to presenting this to all of us, presenting and learning the same material over and over again. So there's no need to like have it right now. And this is recorded twice. Yeah. I'd love to speak about right use of power in the context of a word that tends to trigger people, like a lot. You already know the word I'm going towards. It's a word that, unfortunately, most people have this idea that of what it means, but don't actually know what it means, including in many cases in the larger Muslim community. Thank goodness we have a Mani, and she was able to explain to me what Sharia actually is. Sharia is not a bunch of confining rules for you to live by that comes from some other culture and that you have no idea what to do with or how they apply to your life. It's not even a bunch of rules. That's fiqh. Like how it actually comes down to do this, do that is fiqh. Sharia is the flow of natural law through our lives. Actually, I think I said it well, and I don't usually read from handouts, but I like this handout. Yeah. That Sharia is living our lives in accordance with natural and spiritual law. This is a very different, very simple thing. Every culture has some sort of Sharia. Our traffic laws are kind of our customs, our ability to attune to the impact of what we are doing and its natural consequences. Amani, I think you had an example that you gave me that if you throw fire at something, it will start to burn. If you throw fire at a person, they will start to burn. If when like the temperature at which water freezes and the ways in which we take note of it and make decisions relevant to how natural law works and how we engage with natural law. Any or all of which Allah could abrogate at any moment. But the other times when Allah is not breaking with custom, we can kind of figure that if we jump up, we'll probably come down. Things like that. The word Sharia actually originally means a way or path, especially a way towards a permanent watering hole. To me, as a Chinese medicine person, I really love that the word Tao basically means the same thing, the same word, and that following the Tao is the same as following Sharia. Oh my goodness. That doesn't sound like a cultural prison sentence. That sounds like the path of just a better life. What was it Amani said? I'm going to read the Amani quotation. How to live well as a good person in harmony with both natural and spiritual law. That Sharia is how we live together graciously through understanding and anticipating and making choices about the consequences of our actions on an earthly level. I want you to be so excited about that and go, oh my gosh, I had no idea. That's so cool. I believe that that's the essence of ethics, is Sharia, or that the essence of Sharia is ethics, is paying attention not just to hakika or the knowledge that comes to us directly through our connection with Allah. Hakika is what comes to us directly through our connection with Allah. And then Sharia is how we actually bring that out into the world in a harmonious way. Yes, well, sometimes, I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but I've noticed sometimes in communities, somebody receives guidance. And so they do that thing. However, they may be doing it in such a way that you're going, ah, like they may not be watching where they put their feet, whom they're inconveniencing, how it affects anyone else whatsoever, but they're following guidance. I'm following guidance. This is the hockey guy. I have to follow guidance. And it's almost like when Sharia is missing, it's almost like an oblivious, unintentional screw you to everybody else. Like, wait a minute. I'm still working through one of these right now where I made plans for a teacher to come somewhere and do some teaching. And at the last moment, the teacher did not receive the order to come. and I was out $936. And I have to admit, I'm still waiting for enough cultural shift and maybe enough personal power shift. I haven't actually had the courage to talk about it with this teacher yet because I care. I'm in a down power position. I care very much about this teacher's well being and they're thinking well of me. I want to continue to have access to this teacher for the light of Allah as it comes through this teacher. And I don't want to be told that I'm just about money, like it's so petty. Because it actually, if I'm completely truthful, maybe a little bit, but mostly it's not about that. It's about a kind of general confusion that I have about when somebody is receiving an order and I actually believe it thoroughly. You received an order. How about on the level of ethics here on an earthly level? Is it really ethical that I eat that? I don't know, but I want to have a culture in which we can talk about it. If we planned a dinner date and you I arranged childcare, and you get the order not, then what? And Hakika is Hakika. It's great. I love it. Sharia without Hakika is an empty shell. And as I put on this thing, Hakika without Sharia is like flying an airplane without knowing how to land it. Ethics means awareness not just of intention, Hakika, but of impact. Can we say to the person, this is what I'm feeling coming through. How is this going to affect you? And take some mutual responsibility for how things actually play out, given that I am getting this feeling that I'm not supposed to come to dinner with you or not supposed to get on that airplane. And I don't know why, but I'm feeling it so strongly. How do you feel about that? How will it impact the rest of the community? So is that satisfying? Yeah. I can think of there's so many of them. There's so many of them. And I don't think anybody's bad. But I do think a certain amount of misuse of power, including just the power of illumination. Oops. Wasn't even thinking about it, just following the order. It's hard to fault anybody for just following the order. We're just adding another dimension. Sharia, natural law, impact in community life. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Why I'm so excited about it is that it does not in any way imply a conflict, just a nesting, a bringing down to earth, and a lot of conversations with a lot of caring, especially, inshallah, from the up power person asking questions about their impact so that they even know, because I can attest, I'm a pretty ballsy kind of person. I'm afraid to speak up. The feeling of what a teacher gives us, I think it's so huge. This is a path of surrender. And so we go immediately right into power imbalance. Path of surrender. Surrender doesn't just imply power imbalance, it is. We're not Quakers. It's it's not all of us sitting silently in a room in this egalitarian way. We are Muslim. Islam is surrender to Allah. There's the big power imbalance right there. We are becoming slaves of Allah. We are cultivating a down power role. inshallah, all the time. So it's very important to say I, for us to get really good at it. To say, if I'm going to be in a down power role, how do I get really good at being in a down power role? And in the roles of intermediary, where we surrender to the sheikh, we surrender to our teachers, we surrender to our healers, how do we have that exchange be most safe and most beneficial? I think that the right use of power material is crucial here and can save so much pain and confusion, including pain and confusion that led to not feeling safe surrendering anymore because we're like done with that, which I think is a shame because surrender is our ace. When we are surrendered to a teacher in the right use of power way, that teacher can lift us, carry us, move us in ways that like we couldn't walk that far that fast. And the whole point of having a sheikh and having teachers is so that we can surrender and be carried. The whole point of surrendering to a healer is that they can, stick needle. I'm an acupuncturist, so that they can do their thing. So, what is this thing, surrender, that I think anybody here on some level is drawn to hear rather than the Quakers, who are also wonderful, because that we have a longing to surrender and something in us yearns for that to work out well, to do that well, and then is devastated and possibly completely heartbroken when it doesn't. One of the most important things that Right Use of Power Institute conveys over and over and over again is this 150% rule, that the down power role person is 100% responsible for the safety of the container, for tracking impact, not just intention, for creating pathways of feedback, and for keeping the focus on the actual intended service. And the person in the up power position, the person to whom our precious surrender is being given, is 150% responsible for these things as well. I think that's not clear to everyone. I'm going to speak for a moment about the down power side of it. I am speaking from many, many of my own struggles, and but I guess struggles when I'm in an up power position and a down power position. That the thing is, okay, I'm going to say this thing that might be so heretical, I'll have to hold out the rubber chicken so you can glare at it instead of me. Surrender is not holy. It's not, surrender itself is not holy. Surrender to Allah is holy. Surrender to your boyfriend's nafs. Surrender to your brother-in-law's shaitan. Surrender to your boss's crazy ideas about your work hours. Surrender to Instagram, to alcoholism, to the status quo. This is not holy. It doesn't make you holier to surrender to absolutely everything that comes your way. It makes you kind of a wimp, like passive, like you're cultivating, like, wait a minute. The prophet and the companions of the prophet, peace and blessings be upon them, were often warriors, not wet noodles. They weren't just like, okay, whatever you say, whatever you want, whatever anybody wants to do to me is fine. That's like, look, like, read, it's like, that's not how it went. Surrender to Allah is the holy surrender. Surrender per se is no more holy than this rubber chicken. So I think it's one of the important things we need to learn when we're in a down power position on the path of surrender, filled with longing to be brought closer to Allah, is to check, is this wet noodle surrender? Are we just wet noodling ourselves at the feet of the teacher, hoping that somehow that will elevate us? Ah. Have I done it? Yes. Has it been done with me? Yes. 100% responsibility for us in the down power role to be looking at, is my surrender wet noodle surrender? Possibly even hot wet noodle surrender. I'll do anything. Just get me closer to Allah. I'm not, there's a beauty and a sincerity to it. And when I have been in those states, it has been because I yearned so deeply that it's really true. I'm feeling like I would do anything. But it's not about the willingness to go out and get another package of ice cream, unless it is, unless that's really the light of Allah that you are following, because the teacher is from Allah asking you to go out at 1:45 in the morning to get more ice cream. This implies discernment on the part of the student to notice, am I a wet noodle surrendering? Am I a hot wet noodle surrendering and practically inviting the teacher to misuse their power? Or am I with the teacher in a way that is such a relief to most teachers, namely noticing that they're a human being, noticing that they have a personality, noticing that they live their life, they stand online at the lunchroom, they, all kinds of things go on. The intersection between our holiness and our humanity, it's worthy of some time and study and worthy of the student's cultivation. I yearn to surrender to Allah. Now, what does that actually feel like? What does that actually look like? Where is the place in me that knows the difference? And for teachers, 150% responsibility to notice, do I have some wet noodle surrender students or hot wet noodle surrender students? And if I haven't noticed that, I might be significantly misusing my power. At the very least, I am not fulfilling my contract as a spiritual teacher to help my student develop their relationship with Allah. To be able to name this and recognize this on both sides has been such a relief to me. To be able to name and notice, oh, I think from sheer ardor, I might have, my students might be sometimes in a spiritual bypass of hoping that by surrendering to me, or even surrendering to my surrender, I will feed them spoonfuls of light and essentially turn them into holiness addicts. That means they have to keep coming back and keep coming back to me for more. Or am I 150% taking responsibility to keep the focus on the service that put me in that up power role and looking to see, is their connection to Allah becoming stronger, including when they are not around me? Am I seeing that growing alignment in them? And one of those signs of that growing alignment is that they're able to look at me and say, Mariam, I think you might be hungry right now. That's so great. When that happens, I say, there's no shame in that. That is actually a moment of being able to be so proud of the person in the student role that they get it. and are taking responsibility and discerning. And I can go, yeah, the teacher's not really in just at this moment, are they? Let's go have lunch. Yeah. Whew, I'm going to just be quiet for a moment because that was really something to say. To be on a path of surrender is to understand in the same moment the intense vulnerability that we are bringing to our teachers and healers, and the immensity and sincerity of our hope that our lives could, in fact, be changed in an instant by something that they are more able to access, at least at that time, than we are. I am passionate to start conversations that allow that to be a far more common and comfortable occurrence, so that we can, in fact, take our heart in our hands and bring it to a healer and a teacher and be optimally in as much of our own alignment as we've got, checking in with ourselves. How does this feel? Giving feedback as it goes so that we can be as vastly benefited as our deepest longings. I'm thinking about some of the earliest days of my my life in this Tarika, where I was having a hard time with something. Or this is a silly example, but I'm a silly person. I was having trouble with something or other, and I went to Salima about it. This is not a bash Salima story. I went to Salima about it, and she said, I want you to do a weird first thing every morning. I said, first thing. She said, yup, first thing. For the next month, I would wake up, sit up, grab my beads, and do all weird. It was kind of intense. And after a month, it took me a month to come to her and say, Salima, I'm just getting the feeling I could drop in much more deeply if I peed first. She said, oh my goodness. What's happening? I'm not blaming you, Salima. I'm 100% responsible here. I said, so she said, oh, for crying out loud, get up. You can pee, take a shower, have breakfast. I said, but you said first thing. She said, yes, first thing. Oi, that was a small thing. I learned how to do all weird with intense concentration with a very full bladder. It didn't really harm me. In fact, maybe it helped on some level, but it wasn't what she actually meant. And there's a lot of times I know as a teacher, I assume it happens to me as a student, that the teacher says something and how we take it and run with it, the teacher doesn't find out till months later. You thought I meant what? Ow, ow, ow. What a terrible feeling that is. Yeah. And I would love for us to have more facility with knowing, how do I check in? Can I do that without having to worry that the other person will be offended, banish me? I would really love to do a class that's just on giving feedback in the respectful, holy way, from down power to up power, and from up power to down power. That is worth much more than 1 hour to work with. I'm going to be quiet again because I just want to revel in the fact that I haven't been struck by lightning or anything. Okay. Where are we? Okay, we're at 15 minutes. Thank you, my glamorous assistant. I'm going to take that moment though, still. And you can take your moment and do whatever with it. There's probably a lot to do right now. I think what I'm actually doing in this moment is making tauba for my misuses of power on both ends. Stuck, stuck, stuck for Lana Dima, stuck for Lana, stuck for Lana. There is an exercise I would like to do. However, I would like to check in first. I know my intention and what I wanted to bring through. I'd love to hear a little bit about how this is landing. If there are any questions, comments, revelatory moments. Yes. Thank you. Refreshing. Your name is Saida. Okay. Person in the back. Super. Mashallah. I'm going to go here and then I'll come here. Yeah. Yeah. Say again what you said so I can echo it. Super powerful and very needed to have this dialogue. Yeah. Just to remember the mercy in the process. Yes. Or it doesn't work. Yeah. Let me translate that first. When thinking about Sharia, the association is this big, intimidating brown book that her husband has. And when thinking of the Tao, it's this river that flows. So to think of the Sharia as alive, flowing, not a rigid, thick book. We are Sufi. We are not fundamentalists. Fundamentalism does tend to make very large, solid books, and Sufis tend to make a whole lot of books also that we at least know that we don't fully understand. And therein lies the Tao. There were hands over here. Yes.
Hi. Oh, assalamu alaikum. Thank you. In my experience is it's just deeply insightful and clarifying, super practical, and just very personal how you're presenting it, which really helps. Thank you.
MashaAllah. Thank you. I dream of it becoming more and more practical. Send it that way towards Amani. We can just kind of move it around.
Just adding to your beautiful teaching about it happened during CD's time too, which I noticed because I would spend more time with the people. So I would hear things that I brought to CD's attention. For an example, someone will come to CD and will say, CJ, I want a beloved. I'm looking for marriage. I'm ready. And CG may suggest someone in the tariqah. And so people take it as an order, number one, as it will grant them happiness in marriage, which marriage is about walking, right? So I noticed that people think like, oh, it will be just, I don't have to walk. I am under the feet of the teacher, and the teacher will get me to there without me walking. He will, so I brought it to CG's attention, and CG started to tell people, you're in complete freedom. You have to walk the walk. You have to show the love to your spouse and so forth.
Thank you so much. Yes.
So it can come in serious stuff too.
Yes. Thank you. Keep passing it that way.
So my comment was just very clear, very, very clear and very clean. Super appreciate the way you present. And I'm really wanting to go more into the whole thing about impact and intention, because I have my fingers in a lot of different communities, and there are communities over here who are like, no, it's all about intention. And there are communities over here who are like, no, it's all about impact. And we do this human thing where we want it to be one or the other.
Right.
And I'm so happy to hear about a system that's saying, no, it's both.
It's both.
Right. It's yeah, we have this tendency to ask like, well, which is more important for running, the right leg or the left leg? You know, it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Send it to the person that way.
Yeah, what I particularly appreciate is this is beyond an individual skill. Some people might be better at this than others. And that really just phrasing it and holding it as a community issue. I think that's incredibly powerful and incredibly helpful to everybody.
Thank you. Yes, we don't individually need to be perfect at it or even highly skilled at it. We're in community where the skills are being developed. As to quote the arguable sage Bono, we're one, but we're not the same. We get to carry each other, one love. Yeah. Oh, there was somebody over on, okay, round all the way. Do you want to be in your role of the microphone fairy? Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, microphone fairy.
I just, for me, it's like a miss. Your teaching is so beautiful. Thank you. And so strong.
Oh,
And it's a missing piece that is the difference between me slinking off and not being engaged and perhaps falling off the path completely and showing up and being energized and engaged and on board again. So it's huge. And I thank you so much.
glad. I think we can have such cool conversations and get all like, what do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the words, there you put words to something that was missing, that was wreaking havoc.
Thank you, Cedar Barstow, founder of Right Use of Power Institute. Thank you, Amanda Aguilera, current executive director of Right Use of Power Institute. Thank you, Allah, for the original nature and original power that flows through this. Wonderful. I am aware that it's probably lunch-ish now. Is that true? I think what I am going to say is the exercise is fairly short. However, what I would like to do is anybody who's feeling like my personal power says, I need food right now. I don't have another 5 minutes. To please know that I will be so proud of you for standing in your personal power and tracking impact for yourself. And I please go ahead and go eat. My Jewish mother will be happy too if you take care of yourself. And if not, would you, if you're able to, please stand. I think this is easier standing up, but then once you've got it standing up, you can go ahead and sit down and feel what it's like when you are in down capacity of your personal power. You don't have to throw yourself into a pit, but just track your own body signs for what it's like to be down capacity in your personal power. So that you can recognize it and say, I could use a little self-care right now. 10 minutes in remembrance. And then together, as an act of generosity, I'm bringing in a little bit of collective power. Feel for the quality of your remembrance as you allow yourself to be breathed from Allah into your personal power, your order. Be in all your qualities, including the ones you have never used yet, including the ones you don't even know are there. They may be buried deep, but they're there. Kun. 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 And the mercy here is we are given time. This is not eternity. So if you have this kind of funny feeling that you may not be completely obeying that order yet, mercy, mercy, mercy. We can support each other in arriving and just noticing, what does it feel like, whether it is accomplished or not, to be on the journey towards fully inhabiting personal power, obeying the order. B, what are your body signs? All of the other kinds of power are mediated by personal power. We don't have time to do exercises right now for feeling our way into all of the different kinds of power. But this is the most important one of all. When we are bringing that kun into our body, before we even know what it's going to look like, and even if it's going to take, a while to arrive fully, we have the first most important basic step that turns around all of the other dynamics and turns them back to the order. I mean, thank you, my partners. Thank you, my collective. Let's have so many more conversations about this. Alhamdulillah.